Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. This is going to be part one of a four-part series of videos in which I show the entire process of a single illustration, start to finish, without any time lapse at all. So I'm going to go ahead and begin by drawing some little lines that will begin to establish a background for this drawing that I'm going to do. This is going to be an action scene, quite different from what I did. I think it was 2 years ago that I did a series of no time-lapse videos. That was a very quiet scene of a woman in Japan, visiting a shrine, holding an umbrella. This time I thought, let's do an action scene. It's been a while since I did a video that had any kind of an action pose or whatever in it, and so I thought, here's my chance to right that wrong and also just do something different from what I did last time. So hopefully people will enjoy seeing the entire process of a video. I'm often saying, well, I got to use time-lapse, because if I don't use time-lapse, the video will be, like more than an hour long. And that is certainly the case when I remove time-lapse as one of my tools. I will end up with like a video that goes over an hour, but if I split the video into 4 separate videos covering the entire process, it's all right if the whole thing is more than an hour, because each video ends up being, whatever, 20, 30 minutes, something like that. So what I'm going to be doing today is just the pencils. I'm just going to be beginning to draw this pose, and I'll take it all the way through to pencils today. The next week I'm going to be doing the inking. Then after that it's going to be, what am I going to do after that? Oh, the coloring. I'm going to do some markering. That'll be the third video, and then the final will be the final touches, the sort of polish, the maybe a little bit of white gouache. You all know that I love using white gouache. So let's go ahead and start drawing this pose. I'm going to begin by getting in some basic guidelines for the torso of this character. And you can see I'm keeping it pretty loose to begin with. This is going to be his chest. I'm imagining a guy who's going to be swinging into action, actually carrying or beginning to swing a sword. He's going to be a swordsman. So I always begin with the torso when I'm drawing, when I'm trying to figure out a pose. For some reason, just sort of the center of the body, the torso, and then I begin to build off of that to do indications of the legs. And you can see it's all very sketchy, very loose at this stage. I'm not holding myself to final line work. I'm going to sort of discover those lines as I go and sort of figure out bit by bit where all the final lines should be. And I should just say at the outset that I do not mean to propose that everybody should use this approach. I never want anyone to feel like I'm saying, hey, this is the way to do it. Really just showing my process in these videos. And some people may do things differently. So I'm coming in here to do the upper arm. Like I said, I want to have him swinging a sword, and so really, I guess he must be right-handed the way I'm drawing him. I want him to be partially almost obscuring his face a little bit as he raises his hand to swing this sword. So this will be, you can see me starting to do his forearm here, rising up to, I'm trying to get the angle right here. Hold on to this sword, which is going to come, I guess I'll go ahead and get in some basic guideline for the angle of the sword. Something like that. We will refine that as we go. And now it's time to draw his head. It may look like he's sticking the sword through his head, but rest assured that is not what I'm going to have our hero doing. I thought another approach that I have with this one, people who've watched my no time-lapse videos have noticed me struggle sometimes as I try to make sure that I maintain a steady stream of commentary. And I thought, as an experiment with this video, I might allow myself to occasionally talk about other matters, not just the drawing, not only dispensing advice about drawing, but if I find myself running out of things to say about what I'm doing at the moment, I thought, why not just talk about other things that are not directly related to what I happen to be drawing, but at least somewhat related to my life as an artist or whatever. So you can see it. So it may be interesting for people to see the pace at which this proceeds. Very often I will, very quickly put in guidelines in a lot of these videos at the outset, rather than, I use time-lapse at that part, so as to be able to do real-time during the more refined parts of the drawing process later. Now you're getting to see me sort of very slowly figure out where I want these lines to be. And I wonder if I know that some people will maybe start with the head first. They might be surprised that I drew the head last as I tried to figure out this pose. Again, different people find different ways of doing things. I think I'll try to get some indication of the other hand down here. He's going to have one hand is going to be holding the sword, the other hand is going to be just kind of doing that classic clenched fist action pose. So I'm going to just sort of lightly sketch that in there. One tricky thing about drawing an arm like this is you kind of have to, and sometimes I'll even draw so that I can tell myself where would his arm be over here, attaching to the shoulder and coming back, so that I can understand the logistics of what remains, what is seen. I'm sort of drawing what will not be seen, just so that I get the angle of the elbow right. And I'm not going to get into the details of the hand just yet. I'll save that for later. I'm going to go ahead and erase the imaginary part of the arm there. He has an imaginary arm? No, just the parts that you will not be able to see later in the drawing. Well, let's go ahead and move on to drawing the leg. At least this leg is partially visible. I think this leg may be largely obscured by his own knee. And, yeah, maybe I've already reached a part where I should just start talking about other things rather than the penciling directly. I thought one thing that I haven't talked a whole lot about in these videos is my early years in the comic industry. In fact, some people watching my videos who know me from those days will say, boy, you never really talk about Akiko or Akiko, my first comic book series years ago. And part of the reason that I don't talk so much about those books is that they are not widely available, and I feel like I don't want to get people sort of really interested and curious about books that they can't find anywhere, There is one Akiko book that remains in print. It's from Random House. It's a chapter book. I hope I'm using the right term when I say it's a chapter book. It's mostly text with a few illustrations. Prose fiction. How many other words can I come up with to describe it? And that is still available. They've kept that in print. There were 10 books in that series, and all the rest of them have gone out of print. But anyway, I thought I might talk a little bit about my early years in the comic industry. This is coming up on 20 years ago. In fact, I think it is almost 20 years to the month almost that I really started to begin my career as a comic book artist. I've sort of been thinking about it lately because they just finished the ComicCon in San Diego, and I'm going to pull out the ruler here so I can make sure the sword is straight. This can be tricky, this part actually, when you're drawing somebody holding a sword. You do want to sort of settle on what the angle of the sword is going to be. so that you draw the hand right. Otherwise the hand is not, doesn't look like it's gripping on. It's like even now I'm saying, boy, it doesn't look like that hand is really gripping that sword. So those of you who have attempted to draw someone holding a sword, I bet you have had this similar struggle of making it look like the hand is really gripping on there. And I cannot promise you that I'm going to succeed 100% in that regard, but I'll do my best. I can promise you that. I feel like I'm making a political speech. You will get nothing less than my 100% of my effort. In any case, what was I going to... Oh, I was going to talk about my early years in the comic book industry when I first found my publisher called Sirius Entertainment. They were... at that time, it was a publisher in New Jersey. And I had, I'd created my first comic book story while I was living in Japan back in the early 90s. And I came back to America and I started mailing around copies of it. And the good people at Sirius Entertainment, which really is incidentally spelled exactly like the Sirius satellite radio, except these guys had thought of the name first. I'm pretty sure. Sirius Entertainment, the comic book company. I'd mailed copies to them among 9 other publishers. There were 10 altogether that I mailed copies to, and Sirius Entertainment loved the story called Akiko on the Planet Smoo. It was only 33 pages long, and they wanted, not only to publish it, but to turn it into a series. And I never looked back. That's how it all began. I always tell people it's kind of a 2-part process. You need to create something publishable. That's step 1. And then step 2, show it around to people until you find someone who wants to publish it. And I always point out that step 1 is very often the part where people don't get the job done. They never do actually create a publishable story. They're working on their drawing skills or their writing skills to some degree, but they never have actually created a story, beginning to end. So I'm always saying, that's how I did it. I did this whole story. I made it look professional, like it was, sort of photo ready to be printed, and then started mailing it around. Let me talk a little bit about drawing the face here. I'm sure for a lot of people that's one of the struggles of drawing a pose like this, is getting the face to look right. I work mainly with 2 lines, a sort of a central line that gives me the direction that he's facing in, then 1 line for the eyes. Some people will use more lines than that. I think in my mastering manga book, to help people out, I used even more lines. But maybe with experience you can reach a point where you don't have to have a line for each and every part of the face. I mean, again, everyone finds their own process. This can be true. I'm trying to draw his nose a little bit from below. Always a somewhat challenging thing to do, this sort of perspective. And I think maybe we'll be able to see just a little bit of his mouth here. And, let me just say that I do not propose that this drawing is going to be one of absolute perfection. Some of you looking at this right now might say, yeah, it doesn't look quite right to me, and indeed, this is the way it is when I'm drawing something. There will be little mistakes. I know one of the goals that a lot of people have is to be able to draw a pose from their imagination without looking at anything. And when they say, teach us how to do that, instead of showing us how to do one pose, one particular pose, show us how we may be able to draw any pose of any kind. Yeah, that's of course, that's the holy grail. That's what everybody wants to be able to do. But there's no super easy way of teaching that. I'm still struggling to be able to do it, to draw a pose without looking at anything, just from my sense of anatomy and so forth. So rest assured, I want to try to give people advice on how to do it, but it's sort of like if you went to a cooking school and said, teach me how to cook in general. Don't just teach me one recipe. Teach me how to be able to cook every type of food that I want to cook. Just give me one lesson that teaches me how to cook everything, rather than focusing one lesson on one particular recipe. Yeah, wouldn't that be great if they could just sort of teach us how to cook? I suppose there are lessons and teach someone how to cook in general, and I can give you sort of general advice on anatomy, but it's tough, this idea of being able to draw a pose from memory. And what I always point out is that you don't have to try to draw everything from memory. There's no shame with using Google Image to find a photo of someone who is in a similar pose to what you're trying to draw, and looking at that. I've said this before, but I'm getting new viewers all the time, and some of them maybe have not heard me say this, that I feel there's a misconception among young artists that it's wrong to look at anything. It's wrong to look at something while you're drawing. You should draw it all completely from memory. Well, that's just not true. Did Leonardo da Vinci paint the Mona Lisa from memory? No, he had a woman sitting in front of him, and he was looking at her, and that is a great, grand tradition of art, to draw by looking at the actual thing, as it would have been in the old days, where then photographs, as the camera was invented, people could look at a photograph rather than looking at the actual object. Anyway, that's boy, I've gotten way off topic, and probably I should have been talking a little more about the hair and all this other stuff that I'm doing. How do I know how to draw this hair? This is, again, just me sort of goofing around and putting in strands and imagining how the wind might blow. You're sort of imagining the wind is probably blowing into his face, so most of the strands I feel are going to be curving back in that direction. I don't like to have a whole series of strands all curving exactly the same way, so I might have one sort of curve a little bit in the opposite direction, just to sort of spice things up a little bit. And let me think, how many minutes? 18 minutes already. Can you believe this, folks? I thought I'd give him a cape, even though Edna Mode in The Incredibles said, "No capes!" Just almost as like a drawing thing. Why not give this guy a cape just as a design? Add something to the design. So I am gonna... Sorry, Edna. I am giving him a cape, even though it may prove his demise when it gets sucked into a jet airplane engine. Strato Girl! Was that the one? I don't know. I can't remember. I love The Incredibles. And that's why I'm spending more time talking about The Incredibles than I am about drawing. Drawing capes. People have actually requested, do a video about how to draw a cape. And that is a good request, and perhaps I can do that someday. For now, I'll just tell you that I'm just sort of imagining, this would be the upper surface of the cape. Let me go ahead and erase a little bit of the lines here. And back here, I'll just sort of quickly shade, although this isn't, the final shading. That's going to be the underside of the cape. So when I'm drawing a cape, I was sort of imagine where's the upper surface, where's the lower surface, and then try to just mess around with the lines until it looks right, basically. Then you get back into the realm of clothing folds and wrinkles, which are notoriously difficult to draw, and that's why you see me erasing a lot and redrawing until I get what I want. Let's move along here, speaking of wrinkles, and sort of establish the rest of his shirt sleeve. I always find wrinkles tend to bunch up at the elbow. This based just on real life, but predictably also in people's illustrations. Artists who have noticed that have recorded it, and you'll see tend to get a lot of wrinkles there at the elbow. I thought, what if he has like an armband of some kind? I'm trying to come up with almost like a costume, make this look like a pre-existing character of some kind. This is kind of tricky because his body is sort of turning, twisting at the waist, and so I'm trying to have the cloth of his shirt reveal that as it's sort of pulled across his chest. And I said that I would get to the hand later, and now later has arrived. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. You have to remember that the thumb, as it comes off of the palm, has only 2 joints, so you don't want to accidentally give it 3. And then I'm just going to drop in these fingers to sort of form a clenched fist. Trying to keep things moving here as I realize, boy, I've already spent 20 minutes and I'm nowhere near done with the penciling phase. Maybe a little bit of a wrinkle there at the base of the palm, right there near the wrist. Maybe get an indication of the tendons flexing. Not the most beautiful hand I've ever drawn, but hopefully it'll do. And yeah, I guess I might as well erase the rest of this as we move down to drawing the legs and the boots. So yeah, I sort of started to talk about my early days in comics. I didn't get very far though, did I? I did want to, because I had mentioned ComicCon, I wanted to talk about those early days when I first went to ComicCon. I do believe it was the summer of 1995 that I first went to ComicCon, and this was sort of courtesy of Sirius Entertainment, my comics publisher. So you got to imagine a guy like me who basically never had been doing anything really related to the comics industry. I mean, I guess I'd been to 1 or 2 conventions over the years, but suddenly I was thrust into Comic-Con, like the biggest comics convention in the United States. And it was, yeah, a real eye-opening experience. It was kind of fun, I sort of look back nostalgically to those days, because I was part of this group. I had belonged with this publisher. They had sort of arranged everything, and we would, go out after the convention and have dinner together and so forth. And it was, I sort of felt like I was a part of a gang, a merry band of warriors making comics. And I was 28, 29, I was probably 29 by then, which is probably a little on the old side for first entering into comics, but I had spent my early 20s in Taiwan and Japan teaching English. That's a whole other topic. Maybe later in this series of videos I'll talk a little more about that. That's something I can fill out this video with. Random blather about Japan and Taiwan. But anyway, yeah, that's why I was 28, 29 by the time I finally made it into comics. Funny thing is, I was reading an article about Comic-Con, and though I didn't realize that at the time, I was entering Comic-Con right around the time that it began to explode in size. This article said that in 1995 there were like 35,000 attendees, and these days it's just like hundreds of thousands. So yeah, it was sort of, you know what, I thought I'd give him just a little, like a utility belt, kind of a bag here at his side, so that can keep things inside it. Weaponry, throwing stars, who knows? Trying to figure how would this bag be turned in space. You're sort of imagining, depending on how it attaches to this belt. Oh, speaking of which, shouldn't he have a belt buckle? And again, this idea of him twisting his body, I'm feeling like this belt buckle is maybe already starting to pull over a little bit to one side. And okay, I'll finish drawing this flap, and actually I think maybe I'm nearing the end of my penciling video, and good thing too, because it's 25 minutes now that I've devoted just to this real-time video. I really want to thank all of you who have watched this vid, and you know what, I'll hold off on showing my books, but I do want to thank anyone who has purchased any of my books, Brody's Ghost, Miki Falls, Mastering Manga 1 and 2, and the Realism Challenge. There are links, as always, in the info box if you want to support me by getting any of those books, and I of course, greatly appreciate anyone who does that. But let us consider this the end of part 1 of my no real-time challenge, and yes, we will not be hearing from Old Man Time-Lapse. I'm on vacation! Let me alone! Gosh, how often do you guys need time-lapse? Yes, he is going to be gone. You probably won't hear that voice for the next 3 weeks as I continue working on this illustration. Many thanks to those of you who decide to stick with this foolhardy enterprise. And I know most people probably want a more lively video that indeed has time-lapse and moves more quickly than this. But there are, you know, few dedicated people who are constantly saying to me, Mark, stop using time-lapse. I want to see the whole process. No, I'm not that bored when I hear you talking on and on about random things. I don't mind that. So this is for you, those of you who indeed don't mind hearing me blather on and on, who really do want to see the entire process start to finish. So I'm going to go ahead and lay down this pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope to see you next week, because I'll be back with another one real soon.